just begin with the introductions, the formal introductions. And yeah. So good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 8th episode of web series Decoding NEP 2020, brought to you by Edudevs School of Inspired Teaching and Learning in association with Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham University. My name is Meenu Chopra and I accord a very warm welcome to everyone. The topic for today's discussion, Formalizing Elementary Education, is a pertinent one as it aims at building a solid and broad foundation for lifelong learning and well-being. It also reinforces UNESCO's Sustainable Development Goal, which aims to, by 2030, ensure that all girls and boys have access to quality early childhood development, care, and pre-primary education so that they are ready for primary education. I take this opportunity to introduce the illustrious panelists who are luminaries from the field of education. Our first panelist, Ms. Nisha Bhakar, entered the world of education at a time when traditional ideologues in education were being questioned. Her understanding of curriculum and pedagogy across national and international boards and hands-on approach towards child development and education helped her design customized solutions for every classroom. She has worked with reputed education ecosystems and successfully founded and grown schools. She was the member of the core team of the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan led by NCERT Reading Cell. Ms. Bhakar was awarded the Best Educationist Award in the year 2012, as well as Asia's Best Educational Leader Award for 2019. We are honored to have you on board. Welcome, Ms. Bhakar.
Thank you so much.
Our next panelist is Dr. Kotappas, who is presently working with Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham. Dr. Shaurya is passionate about personal development and effectiveness and provides insights for strategic and operational aspects of change management, learning and development. He is an analytical and conceptual thinker and enjoys experimenting with different forms of learning methodologies. Dr. Shaurya is a certified group life coach, emotional intelligence practitioner, NLP master practitioner, cognitive behavioral therapy practitioner, transformation life coach, and also deals with child psychology. Dr. Shaurya has taught subjects in management, human resources, and organizational development. We welcome you, Dr. Shaurya.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
An impassioned leader, Ms. Anuradha Rai, who is the founder principal of Ambins Public School, Gurugram. With a vast and diverse experience as an educationist and an administrator, Ms. Rai has a burning zeal to make education relevant to the needs of present times. She was awarded an honorary Doctor of Literature by University of South America in 2018 and received the State Teacher Award by the Federation of Private Schools in 2012. Her experience as a Teaching Excellence and Achievement Program Fellow at Montana State University and Guzman High School has inspired her to look for ways to make a difference to her own teaching practice and that of others. Ms. Rai is the team lead of Education Echo teacher mentoring programs for school teachers and counselors since 2015. We are privileged to have you amidst us, ma'am.
Thank you, Meenu. Thank you.
I welcome the moderator for the session, Mrs. Devyani Kapoor. Mrs. Kapoor is an educator, an author, and a thought leader. She is the founder and CEO of Edudevs, the School of Inspired Teaching and Learning. An ex-principal, she carries over 30 years of experience with her in education sector and has worked with key brands in the educational industry. She's credited with introduction of a number of innovative pedagogical techniques for effective classroom management, quality circle time, lesson planning, experiential learning, and student empowerment techniques. A very warm welcome to you, Ms. Kapoor. I now hand over the stage to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Neenu ma'am. At the onset, I heartily welcome all our esteemed panelists. And as mentioned by Ms. Neenu Chopra earlier, that early childhood care and education is a very pertinent issue, something which has been neglected, which has not been given so much of importance. Today, we here take up in this episode Formalising the Elementary Education. The series are jointly produced and powered by Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham and Edudevs School of Inspired Teaching and Learning. We see that early childhood is a very, very critical stage. It's a very foundational period. To me, it is more like a prelude to a child or an individual's whole life. We all know, and we all are very aware, because being educationists, we know that this is a period where the maximum development of all the competencies and faculties of a child happen. So much so that the researchers tell us that about 90% of the brain development happens during this period. Now, when we look at the first 6 years and we understand that how critical this period is, we also see that this is a period where certain areas, certain timings are there, which are very sensitive and critical periods where the maximum development happens in terms of physical, cognitive, and linguistic. Even the Right to Education Act 2009 did not do justice to this age group, and it was neglected. The crowning glory of the National Education Policy 2020 lies in its bringing the ECC to the center stage and understanding and giving it a status of equalizer, because this is going to form the edifice for the entire individual's existence. Without much ado and without spilling too many beans and letting our panelists take over, my first ice-breaking question would be to all three of you. It would be in the order of Ms. Nisha Bhagar, Dr. Shauri Kotappas, and then Ms. Anuradha Rai. I would request you to please adhere to the time limit, which is around 2 minutes, because there is so much in store. So please do not, spill all your beans in this section, because the rest is very rich. The formalizing of ECC is a step beyond right to education and will reinforce its effectiveness in the age groups of 6 to 14 years. Now, currently, children in the age group of 3 to 6 are not covered, because our system of 10+2 starts from class 1. Now, the National Education Policy has come up with 5+3+3+4 structure, which suggests a very, very strong foundation and base for the early childhood care and education from the age group of 3 years. Now, what is your take on this development process? Do you think it is a Herculean task? Do you think this is an overambitious plan? Let us hear it out from Ms. Nisha Bhakur. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Devyani. Thank you so much for inviting me over, and I'm so happy to be here in the midst of all that chaos that's happening around. I think we're getting to get ourselves distracted and with such a relevant and pertinent question. So, like you've already said it, and I think most of us agree that definitely a space which was neglected for so long has finally found its place, and definitely rightly said so. Though it's happened after many years, but thank God it's happened. It is definitely a Herculean task, but so much needed and so much needs to be done. And I'm glad that at least a beginning has happened where we are formally recognizing the early years. It is the foundation, which lays out for a child to learn in the coming years, not just learn academically, the other aspects of learning and his well-being and his personality are also shaped up in the primary years, which was so unstructured, which is so neglected. And I hope that with this Herculean task that's come to us, at least now we'll be forced to look into it and give it a relevant shape and see that it is a seamless transition and a progression from the early years to grade one, which otherwise was such a break. And preschools were doing something different, and formal education, as we called it from grade one, was on a different platform altogether. And eventually, it's the teachers and the children who had to bear the brunt of it, mostly the children. So I'm really hopeful that with this, that there'll be a seamless continuum of the learning, the growth of a child from the early years when he steps into the school till grade 12, and definitely so. It is the foundation year, so I think it's a very, very great. I think I appreciate that finally NEP 2020 has looked into it and formalized it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ms. Bhakur. That was really insightful, and let's see in the following time span that how we kind of create and deliberate upon creating a structure which would be very, very robust, and which would be which would give a shape to the vision that the policymakers have come up with in the form of national education policy. Over to you, Dr. Kotappas.
Thank you, ma'am. Again, happy to be here. Thank you for having me on the panel. My thoughts on early education, I think when we read the SDGs of the UN, specifically SDG number 4, and then once we have read that, then we reread the NEP. I mean, I'm just taking Ms. Nisha's, definition and like extend it, maybe not just age 3. Maybe this is now 0 to,
Sir, your voice is cracking. Your voice is cracking. If you could just little adjust yourself.
Hello, audible now? Hello?
Yes, you are audible, but the voice is cracking. Yeah.
May I request Ms. Anuradha to finish? I'll just readjust my internet and log in again.
All right, all right. So over to you, Ms. Anuradha. If you could take up this till the time Ms. Kotappas is readjusting his.
Thank you, Devyani. And I could agree with both of you, also with Nisha. And as already said, that almost 85% of your brain development happens by the time, age 6. And that time period we are losing out because children are coming to us after, say, 3+ or 4+. And, because that foundational literacy hasn't happened, those foundational skills haven't been developed, that gap remains over the years. And that, in fact, research shows that gap can never be filled. And if you recall, the ACER results year after year, they are so disturbing. A grade 8 child is not able to read text of grade 2. And same thing is about numeracy. And so, whatever, extra scaffolding you do, whatever else you do in the later years, that gap will never be filled. So I think it is the most important thing that has happened. It's like path breaking kind of vision, I would say. Of course, the catch is how do we make it happen, so to say. So the vision is absolutely spot on, but then now the thing is how to make it happen. And as I think Mr. Kotappa or Dr. Kotappa was saying, that it is absolutely aligned to the SDGs, and education is also a social determinant of health. And ensuring that we have that early childhood care and education for our young children I think is of primary importance. So I think it's a way forward, I would say.
Thank you so much, Ms. Anuradha, for your insights that yes, uh, this effort and this policy feature is definitely, with its emphasis on numeracy and foundational numeracy and literacy, will definitely bring a lot of change, because something which we had never even thought of prior to this. So let us hear out what Dr. Kotappa has to say on this. What is his first reaction to the incorporation of ECC at the center stage of National Education Policy 2020? Yes, Dr. Kotappa. I think he is readjusting, and we can probably come back to him. And moving on to our second section, which will have 2 questions each. And my first question goes to Ms. Nisha Bhakur. Ms. Bhakur, you have been into a lot of, designing innovative practices and working on the various curriculums. But when we look at the reality, I was just reading that in India, there is hardly any discussion or research about, how to teach reading, writing to the young children, barring, I'm again and again stressing, barring the 2% or the 3% of the very, very progressive institutions, which are the, feather in the crowns of each city, as I say. One finds like there are diverse beliefs and misconceptions, things like in early primary and early childhood, any individual is competent to teach children to read and write with little or no training. So doesn't make a difference, they ask anybody to join in and teach. Then children, then there are misconceptions like children cannot read and write without a thorough command on, letters. Further, there are also things like children should be taught reading first, followed by writing. So these are so many misconceptions. I want to ask you 2 things. First, is there any base to these? How many of them are right? And 2, that also parallel to this, we see that many educators and practitioners in the field of, ECC, they just kind of, they join in without too much of experience. So how could we set up such a system that is going to be, seamlessly implemented and across the nation? And also considering that we have a big chunk of population in tier 2 cities, in rural areas. So how do you think the incorporation of ECC will be, do justice to the rest of the country? And what is it that you propose? Yes, sir.
So how much time are you giving me for this? I can talk.
5 minutes. 5 minutes. I'm very happy with the current panelists because they're adhering. And no, you have enough time. So please delve into it.
Okay. So, to begin with, when we call progressive schools, what makes a school progressive is the leadership, the person sitting on the chair. and the teachers, of course, because they are the players in the in the space, and the management. So
Right.
anywhere and everywhere where you find this deadly combination, which is very, very rare, you will get a progressive school. So, and I'm saying this with confidence because I have been fortunate to lead such schools in metro cities, the so-called elite schools and premier schools, and my last project, which was in a 3-tier city, a very small town, where we did the similar kind of thing, and it fabulously worked. And I was extremely nervous that I wasn't sure whether it work or not. And the teacher who was leading the pre-primary school is a local teacher from that particular area, from a 3-tier city. So obviously, probably she doesn't have that exposure, but she did it. So I think when you say that, what am I proposing? Very simply, it's no rocket science. Principals will have to move out of their chairs in the offices, and they'll have to be more involved into the classrooms. They're not admin people, but unfortunately our understanding, or the understanding of the managements, is also that they're looking at admin people. Admin is set, it's not dynamic, it's fixed, and there are only day-to-day certain issues which can be handled if you have a team of effective and efficient people. So if the SOPs and everything is done well and people are trained, it doesn't take long for them to run the show. Now, the role of the principal has to be inside the classroom, because she needs to be guiding people. She needs to be, hand-holding people. She needs to be identifying the talent in the school, because she is not somebody who knows it all. So if you're not going out to the classroom, you restrict yourself by just what you hear or what you see, and you assume about a teacher's capability. When you sit through the classroom is when you realize what their strengths are, what their where can they be leveraged, how can they contribute towards the school, because every time you can't get a trainer from outside, all managements will not give you that budget, and every time a trainer is not even available also, and there is a dearth of good trainers. Let's understand that as well. So there is enough talent inside your classroom, and there is enough research, so there is enough material, but schools are not reading. So there has to be a reading culture with the schools, not just for the children, for the teachers as well. The teachers will have to get down to read the research, talk about it, discuss about it, go back and implement it, and see what's working and what's not working. Now that journey has to be there, and managements have to be, hand holding them. They need to also be there in the process of while the school is evolving, so that they understand it from the core, not just sitting on the periphery. And when I was trying to do it, my son was in the primary grades. Now, of course, he's a 22-year-old boy, but he was in nursery and KG when I was trying this out, and I would come back and try it out on him. And I saw that the theory was working, because we are always told that these are things written in the books, but they don't work. But we actually saw it working. We would come back. Certain things didn't work. A lot of things worked as well. And especially for language, there is no one set format. It has to be a blend of various things. So just only phonics can't help. Only whole language approach can't help. It has to be a blend to take children forward. And for that, I think there's enough already researched and done. And a school in itself can, bring about a change, provided, like what I said, they're willing to learn, they're willing to be vulnerable, they're willing to be exposed, and the principals are okay with the fact that even I don't have an answer, let's all figure it out. Because I have realized in my entire career that I think I've had a set of amazing teachers who were very regular teachers, but they were amazing when given an opportunity to go make a mistake, come back, talk, and let's figure it out. Mathematics, of course, it's more structured, it's more hierarchical. So it's, if you get the trajectory right, and you're with the right trainer, and I've been fortunate with that, you get it right. But with language, there's a lot that one has to keep trying, because there are multiple entry points and there are multiple ways of doing XYZ. So if that happens, then I think a lot of your problems are solved. And we've always, at least in my schools, I've always made sure that my managements have agreed to paying my pre-primary teachers as well as they pay any grade 8th or 9th class teacher. There's been no differentiation in their salary structures at all. For the simple fact that if a teacher in the pre-primary classes till grade 2, and I would also say till grade 3 is not great, then the teachers are definitely going to struggle. And then the whole blame game starts, and then you can keep blaming, but nothing works. And eventually, parents get stressed, the child gets stressed, and the teacher obviously is stressed. And no principal wants a bad school. So the best is you focus on those, train those teachers right, handhold them, let them design the curriculum. when teachers start designing the curriculum, they are able to see where are the gaps. When they start making the teaching, learning material, they are able to see where the gaps are and they implement it well. So that has worked for me. And I think if it's worked for somebody like me who is not, I mean, I consider myself as average. I'm sure there are very, very, very intelligent principals that we have who have amazing exposures and amazing managements. I think it can happen anywhere. It can really happen. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ms. Bhaker, because this is something you've hit the bullseye actually. And you've actually, put the entire, creation of a structure there. Instead of designing big roadmaps or blueprints, it is the principles to handhold their educators and come up with an internal model and plan. And a lot has been put for R&D, something I know because you come from a mindset, and I completely resonate with you because heritage was all about R&D, and that's how we used to come up with a plan. But yes, few things you mentioned is amazing. That one, that principals and headmistresses will have to take the lead. The teachers will have to look at all the resources because there is no dearth for any resources. A lot of R&D will have to happen because yes, this is important because we can't have one model applicable to, because there are differences in the socio-economic backgrounds, there are differences in the way children, the backgrounds which children come from, the educators come from. And considering that you just said that you functioned in a tier 3 city as well, so I'm sure this is a model which all our viewers can take it seriously and start thinking about that. Yes, this is the plan which we all can adhere to. Thank you so much. Over to is Dr. Kotappas here now? He's here. Yeah.
Yes, please. Hello. Hello.
Yeah. Yes.
Hello.
Yeah,
Is it better now?
Yes, much better. Yeah.
Yes.
So my question to you is that, psychologists report about, as we've just discussed, an 85% to 90% of, cumulative brain development taking place over a span of 6 years, which is indicating that how important are these foundational years, which yes, our national education policy has now started recognizing, and we are all sitting here deliberating on this. Now, the foundational stage of education, therefore, should focus on teaching in a play-based and activity-based. And I remember you just a few minutes back were talking a lot about, experiential pedagogical approaches. So how can we achieve this desired excellence? Also, I would want you to keep the tier 2, tier 3 cities, the government, the rural areas also in mind. And could you suggest some specific ways, easy, applicable, which does not allow too much of expenditure to be put in development of resources, something which is very easy for the educators to implement? If you could come up with some of these, ways and enlighten all of our viewers.
Thank you. I'll just take a leaf from what Miss Nisha was just talking about. Very interesting. Where one is your statistics saying 85% of or 90% of the brain, etc., and so on. And the other side of it, there was some input on resources, financial resources, equating salaries, etc., etc. So I'm just trying to connect something here. On one side, we say that 90% of the brain develops between, up to the age of 6. I'm just thinking back, onto the expense involved in my education from up to age 18. I'm thinking of the, expenses in education, cousins, a general household. How much do they spend on the education of the child? Now, my question is, how much of that expenditure that I do actually goes in that 90% of the time? Sadly, 95% of the expenses that we incur on a daily basis, the end consumer, the parents, the father and mother, 90% of the expenses that they incur on their children is on education, which is after 8-9 years. All the expense that a family, that the end consumer is spending, is actually from 5th standard, 7th standard, 10th standard, tuitions, 12th standard, tuitions. Come to college, you need donation. I don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to say that the system is flawed or anything, but even if you're looking at as a as a business, this thing, aren't our resources going in the wrong place? If I look at the education system in the US, or if I look at the education system as defined in the Canada, where you have your registered early education practitioners, etc., you take out the budgets from there, have a look at the budget. See, the percentage is not so skewed as it is in a country like, if you look at the education up to 6 years, you look at the expense mentality of the end consumers, and we have to save, even the insurance, child insurance plans, etc., talk about saving for when the child is 20 years old. So that's one thing, maybe one thing that needs to come into play, and I hope the national education policy will also integrate this in some form. I haven't seen any lines in it in this regard. Other thing that I would like to connect, and I think more relevant to what you asked me to address, is on what is actually developing in this first 0 to 6 years. I'm extending 3 to 0. I'm just taking it back a little. I'm assuming early education also includes that part of it until 6. See, from a psychological, or from all the research writings, and I'm not going to go into a lot of research, but I'm just going to give you the meat. A lot of this talks that says that the self concept, this term is very little understood even in adulthood. But they say the child is 6 or 8 years old. By the time, translated what it means to you and me, by the time my child was in 2nd standard or in 3rd standard, his or her self-concept is already developed. Self-concept with respect to the child, self-concept with respect to the way it interacts with the environment. Now, this, I don't know if we can take this lightly, or how serious is this when it comes to any parent who's having a child and needs to start worrying, thinking about an appropriate development plan. The other aspect which you wished me to connect on is how is it presently in India, and I'll connect this to our Anganwadis.
Right.
Now, on one side, you have established that the child's self-concept is actually developing in that period. And I think we have all experienced, everybody here knows how an Anganwadi functions. There is a set routine, there is a schedule, there is a qualified, people around who run the functions. And just then, when I visited an Anganwadi, I went into the back door. I went into the, to the administration, etc. One factor which very starkly came across is they have 24 registers to be maintained in an Anganwadi. 24 registers. Who has to do it? It is that same qualified person that we have sent there to look after the children, who has to take out time and enter 24 registers. Registers, death register, births registers, I can, attendance register, staff attendance, food distribution registers, ration records, beneficiaries, donations records, birth control, pregnant women, what are the things they have, medical distribution, pregnant women, development of pregnant women, register, vaccination records, visitors records, okay, work done record, adult girls register, medicine register, monthly programs register. I mean, I'm not going to read out all the 24 registers, but if I were to sit open and close these registers on a daily basis, I have no time left for anything else. And as a result, what's happening is these qualified staff that we have are forced to devote more energy into this. And at the end of the day, who are monitoring the children for most of the time that they're there? It is the helpers. And sadly, the helpers themselves are, a victim of their own emotions. Right. Their emotions, what happens in their household, where they come from, etc. That in some form then gets translated onto the children who are there. So if you sit down and have a conversation with the actual quality staff that are there in the Anganwadis, and you ask them, okay, forget all this, on a person-to-person basis, how much time do you actually spend with the children? The average is half an hour a day.
Right.
The average. Yeah. So when I say the average, there are days when it's less than 30 minutes also. So now here is one side where we said finances, 90% of the development happens here. What are we doing with these statistics? If 90% of the development is happening here, where are we connecting? Where are we putting our resources? It is not, the development, you need to understand self-concept to actually understand what this is. And I can give you a very simple example. There was a friend of mine, or there's this incident which I heard somewhere. I can't recall where, but I'll give you the meat of it. Both parents are working, yeah, and the mother gets a call suddenly saying that the child is usually in the care of a babysitter, an educated, qualified person that they have, who's looking after the child on a daily basis, taking it to school, bringing it back. It's about 4-year-old child, I'm guessing. 3 years, something like that. So, no, I think less than 3 years or something. So the mother rushes, to the spot where the child is, and the information is the babysitter was in a small accident. The babysitter had some seizure, and because of that, she lost control of the car, and it was a small accident. So the moment the child, the meat of the story is the moment the child was given to the mother, the first thing the child said was, Mia woo woo. And the child kept repeating that, Mia woo woo, Mia woo woo, Mia woo woo. Now, to any one of us, to a layman, to a person who's probably not understood the state of the child in those years, they're like, yeah, woo woo, oh, here you'll start playing with the child. But in that one phrase, the child has actually communicated everything to the mother. Mia is, the child's short form for Mega, the babysitter's name. Woo woo is the ambulance that took her. So, in that one short phrase, the child is actually telling the mother that an ambulance came and took away my babysitter, and the child has been without somebody whom the child knows for all this while. So what I'm trying to drive here is ideally a helper or somebody who's not understood this, who's not qualified or who doesn't understand, will probably come and tell us that yeah, no problem, come, let's have ice cream, divert the child's mind. But the problem here is the child has just experienced certain emotions and has no way of understanding how to make sense of it. And that's going to remain in the child's mind until that gets some sort of a closure. An ideal way or one way out of it, now that we have to give a solution, one way out of it is the caregivers have to be able to, bring it out, live and relive again. So when she says, Mia, woo, woo, yeah, Mega, no, she had an accident, but she's fine now. We went to the hospital the other day, we saw her, she's fine, everything is okay. Yes, woo woo, the ambulance came. That's how it happens. Whenever you get sick, Whenever you have an accident, an ambulance comes, it takes you and it takes you to the hospital so that you can get the right care, whatever, so on and so forth. So when you sit with the child and help the child to understand his or her emotions, make sense of it, because a 2-year-old is just experiencing these things for the first time. They don't understand emotions. They experience it, but they don't know what's happening to them. So why am I saying all this? Is because when you ask me, see, how do we address it? I'm afraid these are the bigger things, because see, language is cognitive. For a child up to 6 years, language is something that they acquire. You don't need to give them language. Things that the child requires, actually cognitive things, making sense of emotions, these can only be given when a qualified person is around. Is the qualified person around? It's a question that's open. And the third or connected question is, just before I got into this discussion, I just wanted to get a sense of this point which you said about how is it now. I wanted to understand Anganwadis from the end user perspective. And I actually asked a couple of my relatives, do you know what Anganwadi is? They say no.
Yes.
Do you know any children who studied in Anganwadi? No. So if Anganwadi is such a crucial piece of, such a crucial piece of the puzzle in the national education policy, it's very strange that a new mother is not aware of its existence, because directly going to nursery, which is of course indicative that we rather go into a private setup. So I had another view. I had another couple of thoughts on Miss Nisha was just guiding us through how principals, teachers have to come out of the cabins, come out of this thing. If I may, if permitted, of course. I don't know how we are on time.
Yeah, you may. You have a minute on that, and we can come.
See, three most important skills in this area is facilitation skills, observation skills, and cognitive understanding, cognition skills. Teachers, of course, this is based on all the programs that we have conducted with faculty, teachers, right from institutions like the Indian Institute of Management, IIMs, right up to government school teachers, like both ends of the spectrum. Couple of things which we find wanting in different degrees, of course, is an observation skill. A facilitation skill. If you sit down and watch the teachers in some places, 1 + 1 is 2, right? Okay, note this down, put this down in your books, that's done, great. A facilitation skill, actually, I don't need to expand on it. It requires the teacher to stand up and bring it out from the audience. Bring it out from the front, bring it out from the class. Miss Nisha very, very aptly, in fact, even you very aptly said, you need to make them think. Learning will happen on its own. Are we doing that? Observation skills. Do our teachers actually have the ability to observe?
Right. So what I gauge from here, I would want to, bring home this fact that if we look at the current scenario in the Indian system, we see that the early education is, and that will also form the basis of Ms. Anuradha Ray's next question, that the way early education is functioning is in two extremes. On the one hand, in the urban areas, you have the preschools and the play schools who have a very preset curriculum where they are engaged in some kind of alphabet understanding and learning of alphabets, number memorization, then things which are drawn from class 1 and 2 curriculum, but still they have some structure to it. The other is, as you said, the Anganwadis. I think you just drew a very, very vivid picture of Anganwadis when you just said that, you spoke to a mother and she says, I really don't know what the Anganwadis are. And Anganwadi is a very, very important piece in this whole puzzle, because that is the central link where this whole of ECC will form the, prelude to what we were talking. In Anganwadis, we have, even though the administration and the logistics are, the checklists are so much that when you look at the actual scenario that's happening, as I also a few years back visited Anganwadis, and I saw the curriculum tantamount to either there was some kind of storytelling or probably learning, some kind of songs, folk songs or patriotic songs, those were being taught. So not that we are comparing the curriculums, because either way, nobody is doing justice, whether it is the preschools or the play schools who are in a rut to, empower the child and gulp him down their throat the memorization of 1 to 100, or probably learning of few words or alphabets. And on the other extreme, we have the scenario in Anganwadi. Thoroughly is missing, as you said, and I completely relate concepts of facilitation or observance, or probably building up on their concept clarity. These are the skills and competencies which have been neglected. Now, to Miss Anuradha Rai, I would question that, when the same thing that as per UNESCO's report, the ECCE programs, they say that children who have participated in quality ECCE, the progressive schools as I've been talking about, they exhibit tremendous gains in their overall social, cognitive, and intellectual, their motor development. But when you look at by and large, because ECC will somewhere be a stepping stone to, or a platform to improving the social equity, bridging the gap of breaking the cycle of poverty, but that is most neglected. So this further emphasizes the importance of ECC in the rural sector as well. How do you think, what tenets should form, the basis of benchmarking a formal system? Because we've been now, I think Dr. Kotappas was also deliberating on this. I have been talking about, but we would really want to know that what would be that benchmarking a formal system which converges, one, between the urban and the rural areas, and two, that it is not just about 100% attendance, or about, that this child A knows 1 to 100, or child B knows the tables, or child C knows. It's not about that. It's about the development, the basic development of the cognitive, intellectual, motor, physical skills. So where could this benchmarking happen? Over to you, Ms. Anuradha.
Thank you so much. I just want to take a step back and, for a minute, so what is the purpose of education? So if I were to look at it, it is threefold. So the first one is human development, or, you're teaching a child skills to, grow up, and, teaching how to deal, when they grow up. So that is one of the main purposes, actually. Apart from that, screening and sorting is also a purpose, which actually we are doing in India. If you look at it, when Dr. Chowdhury was also talking, we are doing more of screening and sorting. Okay, who are good, who can go to IITs, who are, not so they are not so good, things like that. And the third is, of course, identity formation. So when we are talking about, say, early childhood care, and, we are talking about foundational literacy and foundational numeracy, and apart from that, other skills, so it's not just this part, it is everything else, as you said, the socio-emotional, development, and, being able to express themselves, negotiate, critical thinking, problem solving, all that is part of that, early childhood care. And if we were to look at, so reading is an acquired skill. It doesn't come naturally like anything else, so it has to be taught explicitly. So in light of all this, I just want to kind of share with you when we are talking about Anganwadi workers. So these are, grade 10 or 12, past, local kind of people who have been tasked with this thing. And actually they try and do their best. And what Dr. Shauri was saying, and I agree with him, and there's a lot of research. And it is so sad to say, and they get a stipend of say 4,000 or 7,000 or 5,000 per month. You compare it to like even a regular teacher in kind of a school, and they have to deal with such a diverse group. They have a little baby, and then they will have an older child. They are all at different levels, and in that continuum of learning. And that one poor Anganwadi worker who's also maintaining those the admin kind of tasks. So the time that she's supposed to spend with those children, say 2 hours or 3 hours, is what Dr. Shauri was saying, say maybe a half an hour or even less. So what do you expect? So I think there is a lot of organizations that are working in this field. So one is that teaching at the right level, and also getting an assistant for the Anganwadi workers for a say maybe 1/10 or of the price or a cost that would cost us for a teacher. Training them explicitly, taking volunteers and training them, so they don't have to be qualified teachers. The qualification is not important. It is important that that particular task that they have to do, say building phonological awareness. I'm just giving you one example, okay? Because in order to decode, see, initially you are learning to read, and later on you will read to learn, isn't it? So it's a foundational skill. So initially the children have to learn to decode, whatever language it may be. I'm not talking about just English, any language. You need to know the script. You need to understand how to make sense of it, how to comprehend it. So if we were to kind of focus on, so we could have, so there's a term called more knowledgeable other. It could be an adult, any volunteer. It could be a mother. It could be anybody in the community who's willing to help. And, so they are trained explicitly on only that part. And, and then they do the same with the children. So that kind of training, if we were to provide, I think a lot of research has happened in this field, and they published papers, and it's formed one of the seminal works of even Dr. Karthik Muralidharan. And so it kind of showcases that what kind of impact does it have. So I think you see, we have to also understand India is a very huge country, and so I would look at it like right now it's a policy that it's the government has, and it on paper it looks very good. Okay, the plan wise it looks very good. Of course, the implementation has to also be as strong. And I think for that, what we need to understand is that a one-off training never kind of helps, because see, how do we learn? Any behavior change, how does it happen? So the first step in any behavior change is what we call the acquisition of knowledge or best practices. Okay, you learned about something. Okay, this is something new that I learned. And the second, but that will not change your behavior. You know it in your head, but you may not be able to, it won't automatically come into your behavior. The second step, when you're convinced, it becomes a procedural. So you adapt some of those techniques into your own practice, teaching practice or learning practice or whatever. And the third part is what is we call automacity. Because in a classroom situation, or any situation where you're dealing with children, you don't have the luxury to think, okay, what did that theory say? And what did I learn in that? And then you have to respond like this. It has to be an automatic response. So that spontaneity to come into your behavior takes time. And it cannot be done through one onboarding process or, say a yearly training or something like that. It has to be a regular ongoing mentorship. And in that, one part is the, acquiring the new knowledge or best practices, but a more important part would be discussing problems or challenges or cases, because adults learn through, their experiences. And for me, as you said, you talked about urban and rural, and, it's such a big, huge thing. So if I were to talking to a Anganwadi worker and giving them all some fancy kind of technique, it doesn't work for them. They will say, and I've had this experience, when we worked with some schools in government school teachers, and they told me that, ma'am, you tell me, you are talking, this looks very good. I have a classroom, I have a class group of 90 children. And somebody's 8 years old and somebody's 4 years old, and so many of them, and they don't have books, and so he came up with so many issues and problems. And he said, you tell me how to solve this. I mean, forget what you are saying, that okay, you can do this and you can do that. How do you do this? So you see, case based. So when we engaged and we brainstormed about it, we talked about this thing, that can we do group learning, can we do peer tutoring, can we do divide them into groups and all that. So that is how they got engaged, that okay, this is in my context, this is solving a problem for me. So what we need to do when we do mentoring and training, of our capacity building of our staff, it has to be an ongoing process where they have a kind of a hub team that is constantly, like say maybe once a month they meet up, or maybe twice a month they meet up for, a fixed time, and discuss that, okay, okay, last time we learned this, I tried it, and, I'm having this problem and I'm not able to do it. So not just from the, the mentor, they are learning from each other, and somebody else will say, well, I tried it and it worked for me. Okay, what did you do? So you are creating a community of practitioners who are learning from each other. I think that would be a great way, a great place to start, rather than, having these isolated kind of, trainings. And because you see, even if all of us, you go for a training, or you go for a webinar, or you go for a workshop, and you get so excited and you say that, okay, I'm going to
implement.
But when you come back and you see the ground reality, and within the next day, your enthusiasm is 50%, and the 2 days later you say, just chuck it, whatever I was doing was fine. However, when you are actually, on a regular basis, and that is what we do in the ECHO program also, that when you meet, on a regular basis, you have someone, you have a team, and you have a community of practitioners who are discussing these and problem solving. As Nisha said, that, I cannot give you solution. There is no panacea. There is no one solution, because India is like a huge, continent. And, every, what is happening in one place would not apply to another. So they will have to find their own answers in context. However, there would be people who can kind of gently nudge them, mentor them, handhold, and say that we are there. And, this is one way. Oh, you're doing a great job. Maybe you could try this. Things like that. So I think that would be a way forward.
In fact, I would not want you to not answer. I would want to bring Ms. Nisha Bhaker also to this, because this is most important and this is the biggest challenge. So I would want you both to jointly address this particular issue of training the educators, because Nisha, I would want you also to participate in this, that we all know that the teachers in the play school or the teachers in the pre-primary classes are those, who have just done their +2 and did training or Montessori training ranging anywhere between 6 months to a year. And then without having any practical knowledge, they are just thrown into the classrooms, right? So isn't it too much to be expected out of them? Do we have any system? Here we are talking, what you're saying is completely right. And what Nisha also said was right, that, the principals have to take the lead and they will. And then you said, okay, we have these webinars, we have these workshops where we enter and we, get into the mold where we are energized. But the moment we come back to our classroom realities, we again succumb to those challenges, right? So jointly, I would want even Ms. Nisha, you to address this, that introducing and consolidating, it's very fancy to talk about foundational literacy and numeracy, which the national education policy is so much stressing. What is our preparedness? And then what is the road you are suggesting? Because you are suggesting that, yes, principals to take the lead, you need to, fall back upon the already existing resources. But then here, when we are sitting, we want to come up with a very, very foolproof solution that, okay, you both jointly give us, this is what we feel. Considering that, number one, these educators are, they don't have too much of experience. And I really like when you said the salary equity. That's something I really relate to. That, and in our previous webinars also, we took up this issue that why this is the toughest task, that handling this age group children is the most tough task which these teachers are doing. And then we also have this reality which Ms. Anuradha just said, that these teachers are hired at a salary of 4,000 or 5,000 or somewhere near that. So probably first I'll ask you, Ms. Nisha, and then I'll again move on to Ms. Rai. Yes, Nisha, what would you have to say on that? And we would like to have a foolproof solution to it today.
Well, you're expecting a lot from me. I'm not that experienced, but I'll try my best from what little I know. So first is that, I've also done the B.Eds and the trainings and all of that. We got to understand that I've had team of BLEd teachers, that is Bachelor of Elementary Education. That's the 4-year training program, which is done by the University of Delhi. And fabulous teachers, but they have also had similar struggles even after being trained in the best of the theories and the trainers when they actually get down into the classrooms. So let's first understand that, even a fresher, and my experience has been, unfortunately, with certain boards, we are stuck with certain qualifications. But let's say when I was doing the Cambridge school in Hyderabad, they don't ask you for any B.Eds and all. And freshers, new teachers who were not even teachers, when they jumped into, and when they got the right hand holding and when they had the right intent to learn and do it, they were magical in the classrooms. So I've had those amazing experiences. So my belief comes from there. So one is that these trainings are not really, those certificates are not really required. I don't know why we made it mandatory, and it needs to be removed. No matter how many years of training. So we are also saying a 1-year BA. Thank you, Mrs. Anuradha. I thought I'm going to get beaten up for this. So one is that, the BA hasn't helped me. I haven't seen it helping anybody. The 4-year Bachelor of Elementary Education, the teachers are still struggling. Then where is the solution? The solution is the classroom. So when the teacher gets into the classroom is where her training starts. Now the point is, how is the management and how is the teacher herself going to use her time and the opportunity given to her? So one is the money aspect. Definitely, I agree. We're not here for charity. At least I strongly disagree with the fact that schools should not make profits. They need to make profits, but they also need to give it back to the society. So if that is because if everybody is earning profits, even teachers and principals and managements have to earn profits. But yes, they need to be justified. So let's say the salaries are taken care of because that's not something in my domain. The government will decide or the managements will decide. The other is how hungry is the teacher to learn. So I have realized that in spite of the salaries being okay, there are some teachers who really jump into it when you show them that teaching is exciting. Teaching is very boring, and I'm one example of that. Never wanted to be a teacher. I was fortunate to get into a school where these things happen, and now I love the space so much that every day is so new. And even today I sit through all the training programs and all the workshops that happen for my school or for any other school, because there is never an end to it. So there is no end to a training, like Mrs. Anuradha was also stating, that you see a teacher faces struggles every day in the classroom. So you have to have an ecosystem where there are people to support her, and that ecosystem cannot be some trainer coming from outside, because you see it costs money, and let's understand that we all have budgets to work on and we can't be spending so much. So let's create an ecosystem within the school where there is enough support system available, and then what kind of training do we have? So first is very clearly demarcate the roles of the teachers. Teachers' role is to be with the children. You can't put them into some admin roles. Let's have different people for that. Wherever at least we can. Governments we can't, at least in private organizations we can. And I've made sure my teachers don't do any admin jobs at all. Second is the kind of trainings that you're going to look into. Training can't be only a subject based training, because a teacher is more than just the subject teacher. She handles the emotions of the child, and what Mr. Shori was also saying, that she needs to handle a child who's upset. She needs to handle the emotions of the kid. So she needs to understand what is child development, how do children behave. The context becomes very important. So when I went down to the small 3-tier city, we did a lot of language, because we create our own curriculum and learning material, and we don't rely on textbooks at all. So when we were doing that, we had a year's time before the school was to formally start, because I started with the construction of the school. So we had time. I had 2 people with me, and we started creating learning material for them. And we realized that, when we implemented, it didn't work, because I was looking at the Cambridge curriculum and I was drawing my inspiration from that for the language program, and it was too high for children. And we realized that these children don't even have the basic words of English language, because they've not been using it, not because they're not intelligent. So the context needs to be kept in mind, and we had to drop all of that. And after 2 years of work, probably, we could have implemented that. So there had to be a lot of ground, that building had to be done. The foundation had to be laid down. So what is the training that you're going to give your teachers? It can't just be only concepts. It has to be trainings on observations. It has to be training on giving and receiving feedback. It has to be training on, how do humans behave? It has to be trainings on what are the areas, how am I supposed to talk to a parent? How do I welcome a parent? How do I make a parent feel comfortable? How do I reach out to a parent? Because he's a very important part or stakeholder of your entire ecosystem. So there are multiple trainings that teachers have to go through. So it's a humongous task that we are throwing them into. And for that, obviously, I would take a step back and say, first, let's let our principals get trained. They need to understand what's observation. And then if they are there, then if they know how to do observations, if they know how to do feedback, if they know how to give and receive feedback, how come they're not able to train their teachers? And I see most principals have been in the same school for 10 years, 9 years, 11 years, 15 years. I think that's enough time for them to train. So why do we blame the teachers? Why are the principals not doing it? Because we are not trained ourselves, and we've never thought that we need to get trained. The teacher needs to get trained. Why should the teacher get trained? You train her. She's there for you. So one is that. Then is, of course, having clear-cut learning outcomes. And again, like what Mrs. Anuradha was also stating, that there is no one solution for all, because the context plays an extremely important role, especially in a country like India. So, you can have a baseline, of course, ready. And on that, you need to build up on the kind of students and the teachers that you engage with and you're dealing with. And of course, curriculum, I've never felt has ever been a limitation at all, because even we keep blaming the poor CBSE, but CBSE does not stop you from doing great work in the primary classes. NCRE textbooks only come in grade 9th, and then we are stating that everything happens in the primaries and the early primary years. Then why are we even crying over it? So the curriculum is not a restraint at all. So, and then finally,
yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. And the other thing is that the urban and the rural that you stated, I somehow a little disagree with it, because you see, I do engage with, I enjoy curriculum. So I have engaged with some of the big brands, so-called brands, which have created pre-primary curriculums. And I was appalled to see that they are teaching countries like America in a KG. And I said, when a child can't even, he does not even have a concept of abstraction, how do you even think he's even going to talk about America? And why America? Why can't it be the city where the child is and the place? And is a KG child ready for an America or a concept of a country? And they've presented very beautifully with all the fancy words of multiple intelligences, Howard Gardner and the John Lewis and the blah, 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 blah. So they presented very well, and the marketing people are too good. So we just adapted. Don't need to get carried away by brands. Your teachers are your brands. I think they have enough. I have a lot of faith in teachers, and I have a lot of faith in managements who are willing to make a change, And yes, there are very few, but there are people there. So if we are fortunate enough to get hold of such people. I think we can't make a change in the entire country because it is huge, it is humongous. But in my own ecosystem, the school that I lead, the class that I work in, if that change happens, imagine I'm going to be impacting so many children. So I'm very hopeful that, definitely works. And if we have a clarity of our roles, right training, if we are vulnerable, and we create a very safe environment for all of us, safe environment for the principals to speak up and say that, we are struggling here, to the management, safe environment for the teachers to come back and say, we are struggling out here, let's all of us get together and talk about it, and safe environment for students to say that, ma'am, I don't know, I didn't understand this, so can you please explain it to me again. So if that happens, then I think a lot can be achieved. Yeah.
So great. I think some of very valid points which you listed, and I'm sure the principals who are watching the show and the managements who are some of the school owners, and of course our teachers would be greatly benefiting. I would just want to add on here is that the first attention of a teacher, what I feel, should be paid on the medium. I mean, all the teachers should be trained to ensure that the medium and the instruments of learning are first perfected. Because as you just said, we immediately move on to the big jargons and concepts which are not near to the child, as Aurobindo says, going from near to far. So those, once the language, the medium of instruction is perfected, once the instruments of learning, as Mrs. Rai said, learning to read, and later on, reading to learn. So learning to read should be perfected. And I think all the educators must, emphasize on the critical importance of the mother tongue or the local language or the community language, which actually forms the world of the child. And if you start from there, and obviously, instead of thrusting him with a checklist of curriculum, more emphasis need to be paid on concepts of observation, introspection, experiencing, and the joy of knowledge. So I think this was a very rich discussion, and so much came out from Ms. Rai and Ms. Nisha. Moving for one last, I don't know how much time I have. Yes, I can address this one last question to Dr. Shauri Kotappa, and I'm sure he would be feeling the gender bias here, because last half an hour or 40 minutes is the three ladies who've been interacting. So, Dr. Shauri Kotappa, the right of children to free, and the RTE so much talked about, as I mentioned earlier also, which describes the modalities of, importance of free and compulsory education. And they too start from age group of 6 years. And, but that was a big step, right? It was a very big step. And so much was, add-ons were given. It was not just the education part, but, sanitation, safe drinking water, midday meals. There were so many deliverables in that, but yet we did have a big dropout rate, and India failed to achieve the much required numeracy and literacy, which now in, say, from 2009 to 2020, we are emphasizing so much, because the ulterior aim is to have 100% numeracy and literacy by, say, 25 or 30. Why do you think this? Where did we fail, and what steps should we take to ensure that now ECCE does not meet a similar fate?
See, I think the answer is two words. One, a deeper understanding, and two, reflection skills. I'll elaborate a little. A deeper understanding of your early childhood education is what is required to ensure that this actually gets across. See, I'm just taking a leaf from what you said and what Ms. Nisha was just speaking about. She also said, see, early childhood education is not about reciting 1 to 10. Sadly, at that space, and one way where, and I'm just trying to talk the language of new parents and parents in that kind of a space. The first thing, when you're in your community, the first thing that you want to show when you say, okay, my child has learned something, beta, recite 1 to 10,
Yeah.
beti, say 1 to 10. See, the catch here, when I said, an understanding is required, the catch here is the child at that age probably has a concept of numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. But the child does not have a concept of numbers after that, say 7. He or she knows what 1 is, he or she knows what 2 is, maybe 3, maybe 4, because see, these things the child acquires on a daily basis. You say, see, she sees 1 item, she sees 2 items, she gets the concept what 1 means. She may not be able to pronounce the word 1, but she or he gets the concept in her mind, what is 1, what is 2. But 7, I'm not so sure. So when the child is reciting 1 to 10, the early, even the Montessori trained teachers, when you take them through a curriculum saying that, okay, this is where you're going to, like Miss Nisha gave another beautiful example, the concept of America, again, connected to the same thing. So what I'm trying to drive at is, unless the early educators understand what they are mandated to do, self-concept is a term which I'm afraid a lot of 50, 60-year-olds have not understood yet. So expecting a person within the age group of 18 to 22 or 18 to 25, someone who's just come out of 12th standard, expecting them to first understand the concept of a self-concept is very critical. All our trainings, all our methodologies, all our expressions today, like Miss Nisha was saying, is directed towards a curriculum. And like she said, curriculum can always come. Have we spent a thought on things like this, self-concept? When I understand self-concept, it is only then that I can talk to my associate, talk to people in the audience, talk to, I don't know, about self-concept. And then comes the third stage of actually interacting with a 3-year-old, 2-year-old child on self-concept and helping him or her develop self-concept. See, the Cambridge educators, they believe that I completely agree with Miss Nisha, where there are a lot, these certifications don't actually count. See, there are a lot of people in that age group who can deliver magic, as she said. Where is the difference? The difference is that the people have, these men and women have reflection skills. They are able, like what Ms. Nisha said, they are able to observe, they are able to give feedback. I'm afraid I've worked with a lot of people in the 50 and 60-year-old age category. They do not have reflection skills. Self-reflection skill is not present. I'm not saying that it is not there in India. There are exceptional people who have self-reflection skills. And you'll see that, and you name a famous teacher, you name a famous leader in the country, you will know that he has exceptional self-reflection skills, self-observation skills. Dr. Abdul Kalam, anyone, you see the output there.
I would just want to interrupt you
the
here.
Moment you address,
Dr. Kotappas, I would just want to interrupt you here because there is something which is coming in my mind and want to draw your, conversation to that. Like you said, deeper understanding of early childhood and, things like self-concept. But here, the fight is that in spite of RTE, we had a major dropout rate. How would you make the parents understand? The parents, because our aim is not again the creamy layer. Our aim is to educate and provide the benefits of early childcare and education to 100%, not just the privileged children. So the Cambridge literature, thoughts about America, all these are very relevant. But what about those students where the parents negotiate between whether my child should spend about 4 hours in, helping on a tuck shop and earning about 100 rupees, or the child should go to school. That is so. How do you bring back the children to school? How would you make, because you just said the sorry state of affairs of the Anganwadis, where we are providing them with everything. I want you to hear your views on that how would we manage to bridge this, or, let not the NEP, this feature meets the same fate as ours, because RTE was more applicable to people of the unprivileged. All this is fine, concepts of self, but for them it is कि मेरा बच्चा पढ़ाई की बजाय वो मेरे साथ काम पे जाए. That is the thing. I mean, let's just work on, because, yeah.
Okay. If I have your permission, I have a couple of questions for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Number one, why is the dropout rate there?
Yeah, the moderator is actually, that is what we are working on.
So why are parents mind?
Because,
why are parents?
See, there are two things. One is
because
that
your own words. Sorry, I'll take your.
Yeah.
I apologize. From your own words, the reason there is a dropout is because they don't see value. They see more value in the child. The tuck shop example. They see more value there rather than the child going to, rather than child spending the time somewhere else. Now, supposing I went and told the same parents that Dr. Abdul Kalam is going to be spending 4 hours with your child, do you think I'll be able to increase the rate?
Maybe
of course, assuming that the parent, assuming that the parent knows who Dr. Kalam is.
Yes, that is my question. That
we are assuming that. Assuming the parent knows who Dr. Kalam is, will I be able to sway them, or will I be able to increase the rate? I will. So the question is, I cannot bring back Dr. Kalam from heaven. How can I create a Dr. Kalam equivalent in all of my Anganwadis?
Right.
And it's not rocket science. Once an adult knows how to reflect, he or she will be able to address feedback, he or she will be able to address observation, he or she will be able to look at the curriculum, tweak it and say, look, I don't need things like, the explaining what America is somewhere else. He or she will be able to comprehend, mixed with the understanding of, how a brain develops in the early child. He or she will be able to comprehend that the child does not understand 7. The child has a concept of 4. The child has a concept of 1. Let me help the child to grasp the concept of 7, in whatever forms, instruments, tools for learning, etc. There's lots of literature, there's lots of documents available in this. It's just a matter of will. If somebody wants to have it there, you connect the resources to it. You bring. Miss Nisha was just saying, see the way forward is, have the teachers got an understanding of what the child needs to be brought to. Second, have they got the reflection skills to match that? So the moment you have these two things in place, automatically the value will get translated to your end user, which at present is a child who is 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old, and thereafter will get transferred to the parent. And once the parent sees that value there, once the parent starts seeing that, okay, this is what is happening. See, things like problem-solving skills can actually be brought at that age group. You can show a child who is 2 or 3 years old what problem-solving means. There are methods. I mean, I'm just an amateur in it, but I'm the panelists, such things can be brought out in that level. So how do we bring it? As an Anganwadi teacher, I need to be able to sit down with a notebook and say, look, yesterday I did this. It did not reach across. I need to be able to understand that it did not reach across. I need to be able to sit down. Okay, tomorrow when I go into that classroom, this is what I'm going to do differently. And then I should be able to gauge whether it reached across, whether the value got there. The moment the value starts coming across, you will immediately see. That's another reason why a lot of us prefer qualified teachers. Primary school is more privatized, etc., because we see value there. And a middle class Indian or an upper middle class, even aristocratic Indian today, wants to see value. If the parent feels that it will get more value education or more value at home or within the community, or if I send the child to my grandparents, probably the child will better develop, then that's what they're going to do.
Yeah, I think, yes. So to sum it up.
Have I addressed
Yes,
your question? Have I addressed
that is what exactly I was
important.
trying to gauge. I was writing the points, and what I felt from your conversation was that one, that the education needs to be purposeful. Second is it should draw relevance and meaning to the child. It will only happen, it has to not just be memorization of facts, because we can't lure students or children only by a midday meal or sanitation or those things. Those should be part of the holistic development. And thirdly, the educators have to understand that they have to make these classrooms more engaging and add on to more reflections methodology, observations. These are the pedagogical approaches which I think, if would be adopted in especially the areas that we are talking about, would add meaning to the purposeful learning, as I always call it. And probably we will not be seeing the picture of Anganwadi, which we all have been seeing and you just quoted. So am I right in assessing what you wanted to say? That is so. Now we have a couple of questions by the audience, and I think this time we've got a lot of questions, and that is why I want to give audience a good chance to interact with the panelists. So we have a question from Ms. Ravita Rana. Can you please let us know how to implement multiple intelligence in a single class, and how to recognize which child is possessed of what type of intelligence? So I think this question I would like to address to, because they have not addressed, the panelists, maybe to Ms. Anuradha Rai, if you could address this question, that will be nice.
Sure. So I think in any class, okay, unless you know each of your children, like, one is the theory of multiple intelligences, and one is that, different learning styles. So these are two very, very important things that as a teacher, we need to know that each child, is he a kinesthetic learner? Is he, a visual learner or whatever? And then we should address the needs of all children. So you cannot kind of teach like to specific to this or specific to that. So you will use an approach which we call a multi-tiered approach and multi-level, and using multiple resources which will address all these learners. So I think that should be our approach, trying to see that the same the same concept is taught in many different ways, so that we address the needs of all our learners. So that would be one part. And then as a teacher, so in one single class, if you say that, how would you know? Because all of us, it's not completely you are of one particular intelligence or one particular learning style. That may be your dominant learning style, but at the same time there would be others aspects also which are there. So by addressing using multi-leveled and multi-tiered system, I think you can address all those learners, is what I feel.
Yeah, I hope the ma'am has addressed the question very well. And I would just add on this point that, educators need to have an understanding themselves of the various types of multi-intelligences and go beyond these jargons and identify the competency, I mean, bring those big terms down to competencies, that where does the child effortlessly pick up a concept, or how does he, so those are the things which, and there are no set recipes. You need to design your own way of identifying. Thank you so much, Miss Anuradha. The next question is a very interesting question. This is by Miss Jessica Kharbanda, and they say that she's saying that, what do you suggest for children who have not been to a playgroup and are directly put in front of the virtual classes in the nursery? I'm sure, I don't know whether she is a young mother or a young teacher, but I'm sure that's such a relevant question, because last 2 years, and we really don't know how many months the situation will take us to come back to the normalcy. So yes, children are missing on to their childhood. Miss Nisha Bhakur, would you like to address this question, please?
Okay, so that's a tough one.
Yeah.
I'll try to answer, because I'm not a great fan of online learning for the early years, because it is one, we need to understand that it is very tough. Especially when the teacher has not even had any physical interaction with the child and the child doesn't know her at all, because he needs to have that comfort with her, he needs to understand her, and suddenly it's a screen where the child is there, and that's not a natural world for a kid. So the teacher will have to be a little less ambitious about reaching out, because I know teachers get very upset that I'm not able to reach out to the child, so probably I'm not doing a great job. So one, she needs to understand that, and the parent also needs to understand this, because there are a lot of children who have now entered into nursery and they've not met the teacher physically at all, and you see the teacher has no understanding of the kid, because with the screen time in front, there's only so much that you can understand and learn about a kid, and a kid is much more than that, especially the early years, where they love to move around. You watch them move around, you watch them play around, you watch them talk, you watch them touch, feel, so all that experience is lost. So I think like what we were doing in the school, we were not doing any kind of a formal teaching at all, and we had told the parents that we will not be doing it. All that we were doing was a lot of storytelling sessions. We were using different kinds of ways to reach out to children, even in storytelling. There were certain videos that we were downloading from the net. There were times when teachers were making some puppets and all, and they were narrating, and teachers who are really great at narration, because with the online platform, again, the teacher is also restricted, she can't use her complete potential, so it has to be really somebody who's great at storytelling. So there was a lot of storytelling sessions happening, there were a lot of rhymes happening, there were a lot of yoga happening, jumping around happening, and that's how we limited the connect between the teacher and the child. And I think the parents should rest for a while out here, where the formal maths and the language and all is to happen, because language is happening by talking, the children sharing about the day, the teacher sharing about her day. You're talking about a character of the story, you're talking about a story, you're talking about different emotions and feelings that the child must have gone through during the day, giving them a time to talk. All that is what a teacher can probably do.
Yeah.
I wanted to share in. Yeah.
Can I add something to that?
Yes, yes, please, please.
So I
Yeah.
completely agree with Nisha. Just one or two more things. Or what you can do is, having a one-on-one session with the child, with every child, and also engaging in small group engagement. So I think all of us faced this dilemma last year, especially for a pre-primary, because they had never met physically. So what really helped was, just connecting with the child and the parents, understanding what the child likes and doesn't, spending that little half an hour, 1 hour, once or twice before you formally kind of, you come together as a group. So I think that helped immensely. So maybe you could try that.
And also the timing of the class, where you can't start too early with these children. So we were starting around 10:30, 11, and we were not doing it post lunch. We were doing a yoga session, or a jumping, or the yoga teacher would do it with them, saying that today we're going to do this exercise, because children were sitting at home and parents wanted that. So that was happening in the evenings around 5ish, 4:30, 5ish, when they've had a sleep, they're okay, and they're ready for some game. or in the morning between 10:30 to 12:30 was the time that we were keeping, and they were not long sessions at all. So they had to be very small sessions with gaps in between and then coming up. And yes, what Mrs. Rai just said, that building that connection and that bond and that familiarity is extremely important before you roll out any kind of a structure for early childhood.
Great. Thank you so much, both Ms. Anuradha Rai and Ms. Nisha. And of course, Dr. Kotappa. I think this issue is so pertinent, and I think it is so close to every educator's, every principal's heart, that is where the journey of a child begins. And I'm sure NEP has set the ball rolling, and we all will follow this momentum and will not let it die. So, summing up the discussion, that the first 6 years we all realize are considered to be the golden years of the child's life, and children grow faster, they learn more quickly, and hence it is here that they pick up, rapidly they pick up skills like acquisition of skills and habit formation, concept formation. Also, we understand that a sound foundation of social, emotional, physical, intellectual childhood will lead to making up a holistic and a more confident personality in later life. With this, we come to the end of our show. A heartfelt thank you to all our panelists. And I want to tell our viewers that very soon we will be starting our web page on decoding national education policy, which will feature all our episodes and which will also have a live one-on-one discussion. We'll be addressing your queries. You will be able to meet some of the panelists on that forum. So thank you so much once again, and stay tuned for our next equally enriching session. Thank you so much to everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure meeting all of you.
So much.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.